Greetings, my name is JC,
And I'm Ian.
and this is the Gamer's Gaiden. In this episode, we are going to be talking about the best of the last decade, 2010 to 2019.
Yeah, we're almost done here. The year's just about up,
Yep,
so
just a couple more weeks to go.
not only is the year almost up, but the decade is almost up. So we thought it might be a good thing to look back and see what for us have been the things that really stand out.
Yeah, so this is going to be a list where we go through a bunch of the different genres, some of the platforms, and things like that. It's just some things related to video games as a whole. And these are the games that we liked the most over the last decade and the ones that really resonated with us the most.
Yeah, the kind of thing that really changed our gaming landscape. The real standout titles.
So let's get into the different genres to start off with. And to start off, we're going to do something that we talk a lot about on this channel that we tend to really enjoy: indie games. So do you want to go through your list first, Ian?
Yeah, sure. Mine is all over the map. But first for me was Stardew Valley.
Cool.
Because, it's just in my opinion, it's like the pinnacle of Harvest Moon.
Yep.
Then I had Hotline Miami,
All right.
which, we go over in the music episode. That opened me up to a whole genre of music that I had never really gotten into before.
Yeah.
Plus, the gameplay is fantastic. The story is weird and wonderful.
Yeah, the gameplay is much like the original Grand Theft Auto and has a little bit more modern elements to it, which is really fun.
Yeah, and it kind of plays as a puzzle game too.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's this weird murder puzzle that you're trying to put together. But next up, I had FTL,
Right.
Faster Than Light, which what can you say about Faster Than Light? It's a roguelite space game.
Yeah, this game is in a lot of my friends' favorite indie games of all time. They've all really enjoyed this game due to, I think a lot of the factor of that is that every game that you play is different, and it makes the replayability really, really enjoyable.
And what's fascinating is that there is no story really. So you're making your story. You're naming your crew members.
Yeah.
And you're having those experiences all on your own. And then I've got Dead Cells.
Okay.
Which, if you've been watching this for a while, I raved about that earlier in the year. Which is a Souls-like Metroidvania.
Yeah.
Rogue light. It's so many genres mixed together, but everything about it works, and visually it's beautiful. Again, it's one of those things where every time you play it, it's a little bit different.
Right.
And then finally on my list is Slay the Spire.
Yeah, this is a game that you've been speaking about recently because it's been ported over to the Switch.
Yeah, I think what'll be really interesting is to look back at this list maybe next year and just see if and how high up Slay the Spire hits for me.
Right.
But I really think this is something I'm going to be playing for possibly ever.
Right.
It's the kind of game you can just go back and play for 5 minutes and have a fantastic time.
Awesome.
So, how about you, JC? Let's hit me with what you got. I got some ideas, but
So with all of my lists are structured from the worst to the best. Not that the first game that I'm listing is the worst game, because that's not what this list is, but I'm building up to the best title that I think in each of my lists.
the least of the best?
Yeah, the least of the best. So anyway,
Mine are all in random order.
yes.
Because I couldn't...
That's the way we function.
I could not dream of making these in any sort of... It was hard enough to pick them,
Yeah, it took me...
let alone to organize them.
I reorganized this list a lot of times. Anyway, so the first game that I have on my best indie game came out in 2012, and that's Fez. Really enjoyed this game. The graphics and the kind of gimmick of this game, of the 2D, 3D world where you can shift it, was really enjoyable to me. The game design of this game was really out there for its time.
This
and
is super deep, too.
yeah, and the platforming and puzzle elements of it and collecting of all the cubes and things like that past the end of the game was just really, really enjoyable. And yeah, I just really liked the game Fez, and it's the first game on my list. So the second game, and the next three games are, you'll notice a trend. They're narrative-driven games because that's kind of what I like about indie games because they can focus on this type of thing a little bit differently than other games. But number three on the list is The Walking Dead Season 1, which came out in 2012. This game was really interesting take on the IP of The Walking Dead. The comic and the television show series are very different from each other, but very same in the same way, and so is this. And I just really love the storytelling and the character development of everybody in this series, and I just
This was Telltale's first kind of big hit with their like narrative formula, wasn't it?
yeah, it really was kind of the game that put them on the map. And
This essentially spawned its own like subgenre.
yeah, it really did. And yeah, I just really love the character development of Clementine, and it's just a really, really great story. And the other seasons are great too, but specifically, I like the first season the best. The next one is another Telltale game. I like this one a little bit better, just a little bit. It's The Wolf Among Us, which came out
Ooh.
in 2013. It's kind of like the Fable characters, all hodgepodged into their own world, and it's kind of like a just really interesting take on the different, like Sleeping Beauty, and there's Snow White and a lot of the different characters from those fairy tales and stuff like that. And it's just a really cool world, and I just really like the characters and the storytelling of this game as well. And I just think it was one of the better narrative-driven indie games out there over the last decade. So number two is The Wolf Among Us.
And that's one of the Telltale games you don't often hear about. You
Yeah,
usually hear about a lot of the other big series, like you always hear about The Walking Dead.
Mhm.
You usually hear about their Batman games.
Yeah.
But yeah, Wolf Among Us. From everything, it's on my list of things to play.
Yeah.
I've only ever heard good things, but you don't tend to hear about it too much.
And I think that's really because it's kind of a unique IP. I think that's one of the reasons why it's kind of like that sleeper hit, is because some people just didn't really check it out because it wasn't an IP that they knew.
Yeah.
And if you've missed this game and you have played all the other ones from Telltale, definitely give this game a shot. It's definitely worth it. And then the best indie game, as to some people might not be surprised, but Life is Strange, which came out in 2015. Yeah,
You don't say, JC.
it's the best game. So in the indie games. So
If anybody wants to know why, we have an entire episode dedicated to it.
yep, and it's
Feel free.
referenced in multiple episodes. This probably wasn't a surprise. I just really love the storytelling. I really love the characters. Max and Chloe are very, very well-written characters. Love them or hate them. And yeah, the final selection of Bay or Bay is just, that kind of choice I think will resonate with gamers who have played it and enjoyed the game for a really long time. I really love this game. So those are the best indie games of the last decade, according to us.
According to us.
So let's go into one of my favorite genres, best RPG. This list was really hard for me, and the reason why is because I couldn't really decide what to put on this list, because there's not only so many games that are RPGs that I haven't played, which we'll get to later in a different list, but it's just so many that I have played, and so many of them that are so good, and like really what deserves to be on this list. So I'll go. I have three of them for this. So number three is Ni no Kuni: Wrath of the White Witch, which came out in 2013. This is basically level 5 and Studio Ghibli working together to make a role-playing game, and it is fantastic. If you like good role-playing games, level 5 is one of the best developers out there that make role-playing games.
Yep.
And if you like artwork and animation, and you don't know who Studio Ghibli is, check them out. And they're really profound in their art style and everything. And this is an amalgamation of a lot of really great elements and a really, really great story. And yeah, it's a really great game.
Yeah,
And
it's an exceptional piece of art.
mhm,
This was on my list. It was on my short list, I should say. It didn't make my list,
fair enough.
but yeah, this is just beautiful. If you haven't played it, they have released
The
like
remaster of it.
remasters
Yeah,
on the PS4
PS4.
and there's a regular version on the Switch as
Hmm.
well.
I believe it's on Steam as well.
Play
So
it.
yeah, definitely check it out if you're interested in the genre.
Yeah.
Number two on my list, number two, number one, I kept on flipping, but I decided on Divinity Original Sin 2, which came out in 2017. This game is kind of one of the spiritual successors to potentially one of the greatest RPGs of all time, the Baldur's Gate series. And yeah, it does a really, really great job of the first one that they did and kind of elevated it to a new level, which is why I put the second one on the list. And if you like isometric RPGs that are just really like long, like it's probably like 60 to 100 hours, depending on how linear you play the game and how much
And it
extras you
even
play.
plays really well on console.
Yeah,
Like that's the only
there's
place
console
I've
versions of this as
experienced
well.
it,
Hmm.
and it's yeah,
Yeah.
I was really happy.
And so it's a really great RPG, and if you like those types of RPGs, anything from the Baldur's Gate or Neverwinter or any of the BioWare or old Interplay RPGs and stuff like that, this is right up your alley. Divinity Original Sin 2 is number two. The final one on my list, again, I had a really hard time choosing if this was number one or number two, but number one is Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, which came out in 2018. This is essentially the same story. It's the same type of game. The storyline and its gameplay are different and unique enough that there's either than it being kind of like an isometric RPG, it kind of stops there and it being an RPG. But yeah, it's another really, really great game. And I just think this has that little bit of edge above Original Sin 2. So I place it on my number one. But if you really like RPGs, computer RPGs specifically, this is another great computer RPG style game. And it's just one of those games that I think will stand the test of time and players will enjoy for a really long time. And I'll probably play again in the future. And I see many gamers as well doing the same thing, and that's why that game is on my list. Your list of best RPGs, Ian?
Mine are a little bit more straightforward. Uh, so for me, again, in no particular order because I couldn't do that to myself. Um, on my list, I've got the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt,
Yep.
which was a huge surprise for me. I mean, I picked it up as soon as it came out, and I was just like absorbed into it. I loved everything about this game,
Hmm.
but it blew me away because I didn't like either of the previous Witcher games.
I think that's kind of the consensus with a lot of people's opinion on the Witcher series. And it's just interesting because of the story of the history of the development and its game engine. And this was kind of where they kind of broke off from their hybrid of the Aurora engine, which is a BioWare engine, into what it became in The Witcher 3. And they just kind of the first one was like a great game and then they made it better, and then the second one was a great game and they made it astronomically better and then became a profound prolific game. It's not surprising that this is on like best RPGs of all time.
Like this is fantastic. Like everything about this game is great. I've gone back and I've started playing it again
Awesome.
because it's just there's so much to it. I've digging into the lore and going and investigating a contract and figuring out the right things that you need.
Hmm.
And okay, if you don't use those particular oils, you don't use those particular signs, it's going to have a profound impact on how difficult that fight is for you.
Yeah.
Man, this game is good.
And so before you continue on, a lot of people are probably wondering, especially people who know me, JC, why isn't this on your list? I'll get into that later. If you've been watching the series, you probably know why.
Yeah, you
I
never
just
played
don't
it.
feel I haven't played it long enough. I don't feel like I have a formed enough opinion. Um,
And Gwent, I've played so many hours of Gwent.
yeah.
Not the like standalone version because I can't stand that. But the in-game version is so good.
Yeah.
So good. Everything about this game. Okay, moving on. Persona 5.
This is a great game.
Yeah. Like this again, this is one of those series where they made they made something good and then improved upon it and then just kept improving.
Yeah.
And then you finally get this this package.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because Persona 3 and 4 were very popular games within their niche, and then like almost everybody was talking about, like everybody within kind of the realm or clique of like RPG players didn't necessarily talk about Persona 3 and 4, and then all of a sudden everybody knew what Persona 5 was.
But even, I mean, I found like within my circle of RPG players, like, yeah, like everyone loved Persona 3, and then Persona 4 came out and it was like, oh man, is Persona 3 but better.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was just like everybody was talking about Persona 5. Everything about this is just like mind-blowing.
Yeah. The music, the art style,
man, I can't,
just the interface.
We've been over this so many times, but even just the menus, just pausing it, the menus are so slick. Like, they did everything right with this.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of video game soundtracks that I own and will listen to on a regular basis. I own a bunch, but not many that I will listen to regularly, and I listen to this on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I probably listen to stuff from this at least once a week. The songs are so good.
Yeah. Personally, I can't wait until the Royale Edition, and I think I'm going to really sit down and like play through.
Yeah, I hate myself, but I'm going to pick it up and play that too, even though I know that it's not there's a little bit of extra story and a new character.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still, there's other things, new stories that I really should get into, but I'm going to play that.
Yep.
So it can be on my list of favorite things from the next decade.
That's everybody's story, though. Anyway, what's your last one?
Diablo 3.
Yeah.
If you have watched this at all.
Especially the last episode.
Yeah, you will know that this belongs on my list.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I've still been playing this. I've been playing this. We were just talking about it.
You said you were playing it yesterday.
You're like, have you played any more Pokemon? I was like, yeah, I was going to, but then I played more Diablo 3.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is an action RPG. I know that it's loot grinding. It's whatever. This isn't. You're not getting into this for the story. You're getting into this for the gameplay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Give it a shot. If you haven't tried it, it truly is the best of its kind.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Cool.
Anyways, that's RPGs. From this point on, it's genres that nobody really cares about.
So our next genre is action. So with this one, we had a little bit of a discussion because I had originally put in the list action adventure, and we had a little bit of back and forth, and we decided to separate action and adventure.
Yeah, because there are a lot of action games that do have adventure elements, and that's fair.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of adventure games that have really no action elements.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to take out things that would be considered an adventure game.
Right. So we agreed to segregate it.
Or just have a ridiculously long action-adventure category.
Yeah. So do you want to go through your best action games then, Ian?
Absolutely, because, I mean, I'm still talking, so why not? So on my list, actually, I can probably do this in an order.
Okay.
No, I'm not. But I'll start with Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag.
Yeah. You love this game. This is like your Assassin's Creed game.
This is my Assassin's Creed. So I fell in love with the series, even though it's flaws.
Yeah. A lot of great games have flaws, and it's, it's part of its character.
It's true. It's true. And I was all the way through, and I was loving every bit of it. And then the weird thing was when I got to 3, and they had these boating sections, and I'm like, well, this is stupid. I really didn't like any of it.
That's
and
surprising.
Then they followed it up with a game that was pirates and almost exclusively boating, and I'm like, I love this. This is the greatest game ever.
They took that one element of the game
that I didn't like
and made the game that you like the most.
Yeah. That's
fantastic.
Yeah, I love this game so much. I couldn't put this down. Everything about this, and I played it on the previous generation.
Right.
It did release on next-gen consoles, and yes, it did look better, but
yeah, I
just hadn't picked up a new console yet, so I played this on previous gen.
Yep.
And everything about this, like the water mechanic or the water physics,
Mm-hmm.
the way the waves look and act, the fishing, or I guess the aquatic beast hunting,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not really fishing.
Like the whaling.
Yeah, whaling and sharking, spearfishing,
Right.
everything. I would grind, I would collect things, I would search for things. I spent so much time with this game. The story is amazing. Yeah. This to me is peak. This is the best Assassin's Creed game.
I'll be surprised whenever you're telling me that there is a better Assassin's Creed game. But
I
yeah.
will be surprised because I have never had an Assassin's Creed game sit as good as this one has. Odyssey came very close,
Mm-hmm.
but this is
Not
just
close enough.
this is just the peak.
Cool.
Next up, we've got, this is going to surprise probably everybody.
This one surprised me.
Saints Row the Third.
Mm-hmm.
I played this game for a year.
Okay.
I played this game almost exclusively for an entire year.
This was your game in 2011?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bought other games that year.
Right.
I did, but I played this.
Yeah,
this was it.
Those are really the games that you can tell that really have an impact on you, where even though you're still getting those games that you want to get down and play, that you're still playing that one game and it's just consuming your life and your time.
Well, I picked up every Saints Row game as they came out because it was like, oh, it's Grand Theft Auto. But, the first one was so buggy and it took itself awkwardly seriously.
Right.
But it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like the second one, they're like, okay, we know what we are. We're kind of camp. We're more comedy. And then this is to me the peak.
Right.
This is where they hit it perfect.
Yeah.
You had your perfect blend of a decent story, decent enough story, piles of comedy.
Mm-hmm.
They actually had three DLC packs that they released at such a perfectly staggered increment.
Yep.
That you could really extend the life of this game.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about this was perfect for me.
Awesome.
This is I know that there's been great Rockstar games that have come out, that there has been fantastic Grand Theft Auto games.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm gonna sit down and I'm gonna play an open world like modern day game,
Mm-hmm.
I will play Saints Row the Third.
Cool. And your last game, Ian?
So it's a Rockstar game.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought this game was going to be on your list.
How could it not? Okay, Red Dead Redemption 2.
Yeah.
I think it was my favorite game of last year, and it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Everything about this game is just amazing. I mean, you take a game that literally challenges you to like it
Mm-hmm.
because it's so slow.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that everybody who likes it always talks about how slow the first 10-ish hours are. At least the
Everything
beginning.
about it is
Yeah.
slow.
I'm surprised enough people actually made it through the slowness of the game just because of how slow it actually is.
But that's because the characters are so engaging and so real, and you want to follow their story. You want to learn more about these people.
Yeah.
You know what happens.
Yeah.
If you played the previous Red Dead Redemption game,
That's true.
you know the story.
But you don't know how it happened.
Exactly.
That's kind of it's the actual story of it happening, not the result of it that you're playing this game for, I think.
I knew how this game was going to end, and I still shed a tear at the end. So those were my action games.
Awesome.
JC, how about you?
So I have two. The first one on my list is Batman Arkham Knight, which came out in 2015. This was actually the reason why I bought a PlayStation 4. I was kind of waiting until the PS4 had some more games on it so that I wouldn't just be a purchase for one game, so I could kind of buy a couple of them to have a couple of different titles to play on the system, because I just was, I just figured I would wait because a lot of the games were cross-platform, which is a really big thing between the PS3 and PS4 and 360 and Xbox One.
Yep.
But Arkham Knight came out, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and buy it. And I love the Batman series, and I like, all four of them are pretty good games in their own right. And this game I think I enjoyed the most. It was a really great progression of the series. The gameplay elements were really fun, and kind of the added element, like side quests and extra tidbits to basically keep you entertained in its like semi-open world environment and stuff like that was just really really fun. And I had a really great time playing this series, and specifically this game. So the first one is Batman Arkham Knight.
Well, I don't want to open a can of worms here,
Hmm.
but it's funny because this was not even remotely close on my list.
Hmm.
But Arkham City was.
Yeah.
Arkham City was on my short list. I had it on my list, and I was like, 4 is a lot. I know JC's only got the 2. But I was surprised because Arkham Knight is actually my least favorite. I've never played Origins,
Okay.
so forgive me.
And I liked Origins, so I'm probably not the right person to ask.
But yeah, this was, of the 3 that I've played, this was my least favorite of all of them.
Yeah.
Whereas City would have been it was on my short list. Anyways.
Yeah, I didn't really know which one to put on the list, and I think the first one came out in '09.
Yeah, the first one was
so
too early.
That was probably like my favorite one, and I like this one the second most, I think. So yeah. Yeah.
Hey, opinions. We got them.
So the next game on the list for best action game is probably one of my like favorite like action adventure games, and that's The Last of Us, which came out in 2013. I've spoken about this game before in the past on the show, and I just really love this game. It's a kind of almost has survival horror elements to it, some nice adventure and action elements to it. It has really great story and a really great character development, which I think is its strongest factor. And the relationship between Joel and Ellie is just really profound, and I just love this game, and that's why it's on the list. If you've never played The Last of Us because you either don't have a PlayStation, or you haven't found the time, or it's just still sealed on a shelf for some reason.
Listen, I'm just a bad person, all right? You can say it. That's okay.
Yeah, Last of Us, it's one of those great games that I think will be remembered for a very, very long time, and I cannot wait to play the second one. I'm super excited about it. So, The Last of Us is my best action game of the last decade.
Why don't you do your adventure games for us next, JC?
So, so adventure games. Again, this was kind of like one list to me. But anyway, uh,
Opinions.
well,
We
if
got
you
them.
once you listen to all of my games that are action and adventure, they're kind of similar. So yeah. Anyway, so I have five on the list. Number 5 is a game that came out this year, actually in 2019, A Plague Tale: Innocence. For like a double A game, this was actually quite surprising, and I really love the graphics of this game, the characters of this game. The story was kind of out there and a little far fetched, but it was a really enjoyable game that kind of wasn't afraid to take risks, and that's one of the reasons why I really like this game. And uh, it's not your AAA blockbuster game, but I think it's a really great game in its own right, and I really want to see where this game company goes in the future and what games they create. So, A Plague Tale: Innocence is on this list. Number 4, I wanted to put a game by this company on the list, and I wasn't sure whether I should put which game I should put on this. But this is a game released in 2018, and it's Detroit Become Human. I think I enjoyed this game the most, just due to its setting, probably with the
Okay.
semi-future, and it kind of takes place just not too far in the future, but a realistic future that I believe I will see in my lifetime. And it was things that it went over, whether it be the political statements or the statements about life and just the day to day of people, really drove home in this game, and a lot of different like economical and social issues as well. And I just really liked what this game touched over, and I found it interesting and unique how they decided to push a lot of that on the androids rather than sort of what's paralleling and happening in real life in society. And I just found the game really inspiring and interesting. Number three is potentially one of the best Nintendo games that have been released in a really long time.
Debatable.
And this is 2017's Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Although it's not my favorite Legend of Zelda, Wind Waker is hands down. This game definitely took the formula and did really great things with it. And I had a really enjoyable time playing this game. And it just was a great experience. And to about like I think this is going to be a Zelda game that people reference back to as one of the great Zeldas. Definitely like top five material and potentially three in a lot of people's lists. And it was a launch title, which was pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
And if you enjoy adventure and sandbox games, this is probably a game that you should consider looking into playing because it has a lot of great extra elements like the shrines, and you can just do the main storyline and kind of just focus on that, and you don't have to do all the added extra content.
But you can
And
get as lost in it as you like to.
yeah, exactly. And it's enjoyable either way. I find a lot of times whenever I really get lost in a game, it's not necessarily. I don't find that I'm having the same enjoyment out of it. And I found I was having the same enjoyment getting lost in this game that I was actually playing through the main storyline because they were kind of one and the same. Whereas if I compare it to a game like Skyrim, I kind of see that game as two separate games where it's like it's a 20-hour RPG long story, and then there's like Skyrim, which is the Skyrim that everybody played,
Yeah.
including myself. And that's really the open worldness. Nobody really cares about what the main storyline is because they talk about all those like expansion quests and stuff like that that they did, and the favorite city and their quest lines and things like that that have nothing to do with the like fairly short story of Skyrim. But anyway, Breath of the Wild. The next game, I had to put one of these games on the list, and I couldn't decide if I liked the first or the second one the most. I decided on the first one. So this is 2013's Tomb Raider. I really enjoy the second one with its Knights Templar aesthetic, but I think the delivery of the first game was just a little bit better.
I'm with you on this one,
Um,
100%.
yeah, I like the gameplay a little bit better of the third one. So everyone kind of has its own unique element that kind of makes it shine in its own right. But the original remake of the Tomb Raider in 2013 is a really great example of how to take an IP and reimagine it and recreate it. You could play this game and be kind of, I feel, a fan of almost any genre and have fun with this game because it is a well designed game. Its progression is very even, and it doesn't have a overly hard difficulty curve to learning it. It has really great story. It has really great character and back character to it, and it's just overall a really great game and game design holistically, and that's why I decided on the first of the newest Tomb Raider games, Tomb Raider.
Yeah, it slapped me in the face. It hit my disc tray, and it didn't come out until I was done.
Hmm.
I love this game.
Yeah, this game is fantastic.
It's not on my list, but probably on my short list. I love this game.
Fair
This was
enough.
real good.
Yeah.
If you've never played this,
Hmm.
go and play it.
Especially if like this game and the next game that I'm going to mention, if you like third person like action adventure games, these two are kind of like some of the upper echelon of these games. And like this is including like the 90s and 2000s as well. They're fantastic. So my number one is hands down Uncharted 4: Thieves End. with an asterisk to it. And the asterisk is you really have to play the entire series to make this game more impactful. But the
Yes.
game does stand alone on its own. But having played, and I played 1, 2, and 3 late. I actually, when the third game came out, a couple months after it, we were talking, and I was like, "Oh, I really want to play like the Uncharted series because I hear it ended." And you're like, "You haven't played it?" I'm like, "No, they're kind of sitting on a shelf." And I played through the entire
Well,
series.
I said to you, I was like, play them, and I have 4, and I finished it, and then borrow it
Yeah,
and play it. And you still bought it anyways. You borrowed mine,
yeah,
played through it, gave it back to me, and then went out and bought a copy
yeah,
because it's that good.
yeah. It's a fantastic game. The gameplay design and game loop is just so fun and it's enjoyable. It's like playing through Indiana Jones action film. So is kind of Tomb Raider as well. And like Nathan Drake is just you love to hate him. There's aspects of him. He's one of those characters that you really dislike some elements of him and you really enjoy some other elements of him. And where they took the character throughout the entire series and its final conclusion was just so well done that it I'm not sure the game's writer is fantastic. I love this writer. She's great.
Yeah, she is fantastic, and everything about this is good. Now, I mean, it cards on the table. This is on my list. This
Mhm.
actually is on my list too. We shared this,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna change it because it's on yours too. This is
No, it's got to be on the list.
now
And
I will
to
say,
intervene 1 second, the author of the writer of this series is Amy Henning, and she's actually the person who wrote she wrote a story for a game that is on a different list that I'll get into later. But uh, the uh, the Soul Reaver series and the Legacy of Kain games, she helped pen those games as well. If you enjoy her writing. But anyway, sorry, continue. The camera just went out. The author of the Uncharted series is Amy Henning, and she's the person who also authored the story to the Legacy of Kain, like the Soul Reaver games and stuff like that, which are well loved stories as well. And she's just really great at writing characters and believable um, progression and sort of the development of how like characters change over time and stuff like that. And this series did that so well. Um, Probably some of the best example of like people changing and how they changed, and just growing with those characters as well was a really fantastic journey, and that's why this game is on that list.
but I loved seeing, um, I loved seeing Nathan Drake progress. But you always understood why he made the decisions that he made.
Hmm.
You knew Nathan as a character,
Yeah, and like I
and even
said,
though you're like, oh, why did you do that? It's like, oh, because you're Nathan. Like, of
yeah,
course you're gonna do that.
it's like I said, it's like you love to hate him.
Yeah, no, you really do. I mean,
And even his wife loves to hate him too, and you
yeah,
really understand and learn a lot about their character dynamic and how they interact with each other just based off of sort of how they live their lives and stuff like that. And the people, like, they're not real, but they're real. Like, they
this
have
was
very, like, real emotions, and
this
it's
was
so
a
well
this was
written.
a perfect conclusion to the series. If they made another one, it would be a giant mistake,
Hmm.
in my opinion.
Yeah,
If
like,
I could have, I would have put Uncharted 2 on this list, but it was
it was
released like a
2009.
few months too early.
Hmm.
Because gameplay wise, story wise, yeah, 2 is my favorite. But
Yeah.
yeah, climax of the series. Go play all of them.
Yeah.
Pause this, play them, come
Come
back in
back.
like 70 hours.
Yeah, and they're not long games either. They're like 10 to 20 hours or something
Yeah,
like that, depending on what game it
that's
is.
not bad. You got a weekend.
Yeah. I basically beat most of them over 2 weekends.
Yep.
Yeah. But let's
Let's
move on to
continue
your list.
on my list.
Yeah, so Uncharted 4 is also on your
Uncharted
list.
4.
Greetings. You probably noticed that we might be wearing different shirts and that it looks a little bit different. Maybe the framing is a little bit different. I'm not sure. The audio went all messed up. It sounded like this.
Yeah, it's worth checking out.
Cool. All right, well, let's move on to the next genre.
And I lost about 15 or 20 minutes of footage, so we're going to re-edit this portion of the video, and let's go back into what we were talking about, which was finishing up our best choices for adventure games, and we just finished talking about Uncharted 4, and you were about to talk about Ghost Trick.
Ghost Trick,
Yep.
which gets no love and appreciation, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was released in 2011 on the Nintendo DS, if I recall.
Yes,
Yep.
on the Nintendo DS, and you play as a detective who gets murdered at the beginning, and yeah, you're basically you use your ghost powers and the fact that when you move between the human world and the ghost world, when you're in the ghost world, time stops.
Right.
You move between objects. You use these little ghost tricks to like open up new pathways that you can move through and interact with the environment. Yeah, story is awesome. You basically get killed right at the beginning. No spoilers there, and you work your way backward and try to figure out how you were murdered.
I see. That's kind of interesting.
So yeah, it's a really, really fun story. It has the like investigation stuff that you would expect from the same people who did the Phoenix Wright games.
Right.
And yeah, Ghost Trick. Check it out. Next on my list, which I was surprised wasn't on your list, but kind of sort of was.
We each had a Quantic Dream game on our lists, and this was actually the other choice that I was thinking about maybe putting on the list, but I ultimately decided on Become Human, but you chose this
Heavy
one.
Rain.
Yeah.
Which funny that neither of us picked Beyond Two Souls, but whatever.
I really enjoyed that game too. I just didn't enjoy it as much. It's
Heavy Rain was great. And it's, to me, it was very, very Quantic Dream, where you have various different characters and you're kind of going through the story that way. What I really enjoyed was that essentially if you failed with a character, the story continued on.
Right.
And that you had so many different endings.
Yeah, that was kind of my favorite part about the game too, and really brought my attention to this kind of series because of how they kind of set up the path of you being able to play the game, and failure is really just a different option rather than it just being a game over screen. And
Yeah.
that design choice is really inspiring to me.
Yeah, and I was a big fan of each of the characters. You know, I mean, everybody was flawed in their own way, but
Yeah.
that is kind of Quantic Dream. So
Yeah, it's a really good detective story. If
Yeah.
you like detective stories, then I would highly recommend this game. This would be definitely up your alley.
And I'm going to close out my list of adventure titles with Sea of Thieves.
Yeah, you played this game a lot. You kept on
Yeah.
going back to it, and in different spells, and seemed to get a lot of enjoyment of this game over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I jumped in right away because pirates are great. And yeah, I fell off a little bit, but then I kept going back to it because Rare just kept updating it.
Right.
They kept releasing new and like more content, more islands, more changing the adventure types, having like month-long events.
Yeah.
And just different activities. They've added so much. Every time I jump into the game, there's always something new that I'm like, oh, cool, like that's going on now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember whenever this game first came out, one of the biggest complaints about this was that you kind of hit a wall with stuff that you were able to do, and it kind of fell flat in that area. And it's interesting because they're not adding millions of things to do, but they're definitely adding in enough content for you to continually go back to. So that's very good of them.
The game, it's essentially, for those who don't know, the game is essentially broken up into series of islands.
Right.
Each of those sets of islands, even the oceans around them, look very different.
Yeah.
And you can notice that change when you move into these different sections of the ocean. And they added in a whole new section.
Yeah.
Everything about it is totally different. You know, it's all like volcanic rock. They have a central volcano which erupts occasionally. You know, they have when I first started playing, they just had the Kraken as like a giant world beast that was an issue.
Right.
Now they have several like huge sharks. Like they added in the megalodon, and now they added in like another one.
Oh, cool.
So it's just like all of this extra stuff that just keeps on getting added in
Yeah.
on top of the like classic framework of the game.
Yeah, it certainly seems like one of those games that if you played it at first and then put it down, it might be something you definitely should look at getting back into.
But that closes out adventure.
Yep. So let's move on to platforming games. So with this, I have 4 games on my list. Number 4 is Sonic Mania, which was released in 2017. This was made by Christian Whitehead, who originally made kind of like a fan-made game, and then got the attention of Sega with like I think that and Sonic CD, and they published Sonic CD on phones and some different platforms. And then they allowed him to make his own game, and this is kind of what Sonic would, maybe Sonic 4, like, would have been if it was released in the late 90s or something like that as a 2D game, and it's really fantastic. It uses a lot of elements from Sonic and Knuckles and Sonic CD, which are his major influences, because I believe those are his favorite Sonic games, and just kind of adds and progresses to those different types of mechanics. And yeah, it's like the classic Sonic that a lot of us remembered from our youth. So number 3 on my list, it was released in January of 2019, the new Super Mario Brothers U Deluxe version for the Switch. This version was originally released on the Wii U. I never had a Wii U, and yeah, unfortunately, I just decided not to pick up that console. But thankfully, a lot of those games have been re-released on the Switch for players like myself and fans of Nintendo. So the game is 2.5D new Super Mario Brothers style, where it's much like the original DS game, and this game was really, really fun and fantastic. The gameplay is just like the classic Super Mario 3, Super Mario World formula, and brings in a whole bunch of different new levels, or some airship levels, which are always really fun. Those have always been some of my favorites, and it was really, really cool that you like some other.
No, the airship levels suck. But you are right. Like I did play this actually when I was grabbing footage for it for an earlier episode.
Yeah.
And I played like 3 hours of I think I gave you 3 hours of footage.
Yeah.
I just kept recording and just kept
I
playing.
needed like 5 to 10 minutes of footage, but hey, I got a lot of options to
and I played
select from.
I played a lot of this game. It was really fun.
Yeah, it's really fun. And the cool thing about this is that they actually made it multiplayer. I know this has kind of been in the new Super Mario Brothers games, like I think since the Wii version, but it's up to 4 players, which is really cool. So if you have a bunch of friends who like Mario and you want to play through some Mario levels and stuff like that, the levels are designed with that in mind. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, if you really like the 2D Mario formula, this is one of my favorites Mario games of that formula that's been released in the last decade. Number 2 on my list is a release that was originally a Kickstarter and came out in 2017, Hat in Time. This is actually just recently released on the Switch as well, which is really cool that they're seeing success in being able to port to other platforms for more people to play it. But this is basically a collectathon 3D platformer. So if you loved games like Banjo-Kazooie or Croc or Mario 64,
for all those people who love Croc out there.
I gotta throw in references whenever I can for Croc, because it doesn't get the love it deserves. Could have been a Yoshi game, but Nintendo didn't want it, so
It's a good reason.
Well, that was in
A Hat in Time.
Yeah, so A Hat in Time. Anyway, so this game is really adorable. It has a really cool aesthetic that really reminds you of those old collectathon platformer games. And basically, you've lost all these time pieces. This is the TLDR of it, so sorry for butchering the story a little bit. But you lost all these time pieces, and you got to go to different worlds, and then recollect all the time pieces. And then that's essentially the main component of the game, and then each area has like a theme. There's also an expansion pack which adds in like some new characters and content and stuff like that, which is really fun. You go through trying to collect all these timepieces, and yeah, it's really really fun. If you like these style of games, this has been one of my favorite 3D collectathon games in years,
Wow.
and yeah, it's very happy that I decided to back this game. So I highly recommend this game. Number one was released in 2015. For me, this was kind of like a silent hit. I didn't really look into this game as the development of it was happening, but then whenever it was released, I saw a lot of buzz about it. This game is Ori and the Blind Forest, and if you like platforming games and Metroidvania games specifically, this is a very, very unique and cool mix in between them. The bosses are really, really fun. They have cool mechanics to them, much like a lot of Metroidvania games, but a lot of them take up like a large portion of the screen, or they move around in really neat patterns where you got to use the different abilities that you have to go through and collect and things like that. And it's just, I enjoyed this game to the point where like I didn't realize how much of it I was playing, and I was just kind of, it probably took me longer to beat this game just because I enjoyed the aspect of exploring. And I know with Metroidvania games, sometimes I get like really frustrated, and sometimes it's just like whatever, I'll look up and walk through to figure out where the stupid power up is. And I never used the walkthrough once. And that's a testament to me not getting bored of the game and wanting to actually go through and solve the different mechanics of it, because like some of them are power-ups you don't absolutely need to get, and in order to beat the game, and you could see which ones like you were missing, and I just kept on searching until I found them, and it was a really enjoyable experience. The music is phenomenal. The graphics are outstanding, especially for a 2D game. It looks phenomenal. They're coming out with the second one in 2020 that I'm really looking forward to. And if this is the type of game that's up your alley, it's definitely worth a look into, and definitely worth your time in my opinion. So if you're looking for a new Metroidvania game you haven't played, that's got some really good platforming and unique power-ups and ideas, this is definitely the game for you. But you have two platforming games that you wanted to talk about, Ian?
I do. I don't play a lot of platformers.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of my genre.
A little bit, but that's okay. There was a couple that I thought were pretty special.
Mm-hmm.
First being Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy.
Cool.
This, I really like, all this is just climbing up a mountain. That's it. You've got, you control the arms.
Yep.
Of a dude in a bucket or a pot.
Yeah.
And
kind of like a cauldron.
Yeah. And he holds a hammer. And yeah, that's you use his arms and the mallet to get yourself up a giant mountain.
Yeah. Just keep on trying to progress higher and higher.
Yeah. Yeah, just keep on trying to get up there.
And how many levels are there? There's like 10 of them, or is there 100, or
I think there's one.
There's just one like level?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was like certain number of steps. I never beat it. I'm not sure.
Same. I have not. I know that there's a small hill at the beginning.
Right.
And I've made it a good way up the second hill.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was the number of hills that I was thinking of.
And I fell all the way back down. Yeah, they keep throwing odd angles at you and new elements, and sometimes you just get in a groove and you've got this like good motion. You're able to kick yourself up constantly.
Right.
But yeah, inevitably you're going to hit a point where it just knocks you back down. I've heard you can run this in like an hour.
Right.
If you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Maybe two.
If you played it a few times and you kind of like have the skill set and kind of are in the groove, then yeah, I could see that.
But it was a lot of luck.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's weird. Check it out or watch a video. Maybe watch a video because playing it is so frustrating.
Yeah, I could attest to that. Yeah.
My second one is Bloodstained Curse of the Moon.
Right.
Not the actual like was it Ritual of the Night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
No,
that's mainly because you played the Switch version,
we don't
and
talk about Ritual of the Night.
that was really buggy on the
Not in
Switch.
not in this
Get
household.
it on the PlayStation 4.
Look, I already bought it once. I don't want to have to buy it again to play a good version of it. I should just have the good version of
That's
it.
true.
But I did get Curse of the Moon, and this is fantastic.
Yeah,
I mean, from someone who has played a lot of Castlevania games, I've heard that this is basically just Castlevania 3.
it is. Yeah, this one was really fun to play through.
I had so much fun with this. Enough fun that I went back and started playing it again right away.
Yeah, because you can get, I think, 2 endings or something. You kind of have to beat it twice to
To
get
get
like the real ending. So
Yeah,
to
to
speak.
get the real ending, you have to
Yeah.
play through it a second time.
My favorite part about this was because like the Nintendo games never really had overly large bosses because they couldn't handle that many sprites. Essentially, if
Yeah.
you see a large boss, it's a couple of sprite tiles with a background that's basically mimicking the boss itself. It's not actually tiles. The dragon in Mega Man 2 is a good example of this. The this game was really cool because you actually had bosses that were like as large as the screen basically, or took like a third of it, and it was kind of like the Nintendo probably couldn't have handled that. Maybe with some really clever programming. I don't really know. I don't really know how to code in Nintendo machine code, but yeah, because they didn't necessarily have those limitations, they were able to do these types of things, and then basically use the aesthetic of Castlevania 3 and then add in those kind of cool, like
But
things that are more
I
common
love that
today.
you had different characters that you could switch through on the fly.
Yeah,
I mean, as you acquired them, you could also choose not to acquire them as well.
yeah, yeah.
You could play through with just one person.
Yeah, I remember the first time that I kind of like played through it, I think I skipped somebody and then I like didn't, I just started over for some reason. And then I happened to find the person and it was just, yeah, I was like, oh, like, wow, I totally missed this.
Yeah, I mean, each of them is a boss.
Hmm.
And then it's like, "Oh yeah, come with me.
Yeah,
We're going to go." And you can like go like you have different paths that you can access, which like they're shortcuts.
yeah,
You have all these extra shortcuts if you have these people with you. If they die, then they're gone and you no longer have access to the shortcuts. But I like that each of them had their own ability
hmm,
as well as their own like items.
yeah,
So you'd have to,
yeah. That was a big thing about the original Castlevania 3.
yeah, it's super cool. It's a super cool mechanic. Yeah, and this was just an enjoyable game. You can
Yeah,
finish it in like 4 hours.
yeah. That's one of the greatest things about
First
this
time.
game is that it doesn't take that long to beat it.
No,
Maybe like if you need to retry a bunch of times, you can probably like learn the patterns and like get it done in 4 or 5 or something like that. So
I'm not good at platformers, and I got through this on my first attempt.
cool,
So
cool.
there you go, folks.
So let's move on to our next topic, and the next topic is best narrative games or walking simulators, as some of them are known. Uh,
As most of them are known.
but it's a narrative award. So the first game on my list, number 3, is Gone Home, which was released in
Ah,
2013.
I love this game.
Yeah, it's a really great game. The really cool thing about this game is that it was a story that was revealed to you while you found and uh, re-looked through your original house growing up and kind of looked at interacted with objects. And you would kind of get a narration of what's like kind of what was going on, and the story was sort of revealed to you over the time of like going through your original childhood home, and then the story is revealed through you that way, which is a really cool way of actually uh, portraying and presenting a story to you. It was the first time that I had seen that done in a game, and it was really effective to me. And I really enjoyed it. I think the coolest thing about this game, though, is after you play it, you could definitely, I would recommend looking at the special features of the game because the game actually has audio commentary of the developers talking through every single part of the game, and as you get into certain sections of the different rooms and stuff like that, and interact with some of the objects, they give you a lot of the reasonings why they and what influenced them to like what TV shows influenced them from the 90s to the different types of music and the fanzines and stuff like that that you find in the game and stuff like that, and the scene within the like Seattle area that influenced them and things like that, and because it takes place like in the north west United States essentially,
Yep.
and
The Pacific
yeah,
Northwest.
Pacific Northwest. Thank you. And it was just really insightful on some of their design choices, and I found that the most interesting part about the game. That it just like made me love the game even more. I found it like highly interesting, and I wish more game developers would do that. I guess that expectation might be a little bit uh, out there to expect somebody to do that for like maybe like a 60-hour RPG or something like that. But just some like documentaries on like the design choices, because those interviews I always find really really interesting on whenever they talk about like why they made certain decisions in like older games, and that was kind of my favorite part of that game.
See, this is on my list too, and I mean it. Like it for me, it blew me away
Hmm.
because it was not what I was expecting
Yeah.
at all. Like I had just come off of playing something else, something way more action oriented, and I sat down to this, and it's like everything's dark, and stormy and creepy.
Yeah, it has a very dark mood to it.
Yeah, and like, but like this like really heartwarming story is getting revealed to you as you move along, but the entire atmosphere of the home is like kind of terrifying.
Hmm.
And I was waiting the whole time for something to jump out at me. I'm
Yeah.
like, when is this turning into an action game? It never does, and I was never upset about that. But it's it was something that I sat down. Now it is only like 2 hours long. It's
Yeah.
not a long game, so but I sat down and it grabbed me, and I played it the whole way through, like right then. And I think I shut it off. I went to bed, and the next day I just told everybody that I knew, hey, you got to go play this game.
Yeah.
This is real good.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, check it out if
Gone
you
Home,
if you like narrative.
walking. If you like walking and rooting through people's homes, consequence free,
Yep.
Gone Home.
So the second game on my list is What Remains of Edith Finch, which was released in 2017. This game is another narrative game where you do a lot of walking and discovering and different things of the story and its progression throughout it. And it's much like a lot of the other walking simulators, but its presentation is just that much more. It's a very, very good game that if you like something that's story driven, I highly recommend this game. It doesn't take too long to beat it. A lot of these types of games don't generally, and it's just this is one of those games that kind of has influenced quite a bit of different like narrative concepts. I feel or will in any type of genre just because of their delivery, and it's just I don't really want to say too much about this game because if you talk about it too much it basically kind of spoils a lot of it for you. So just if you like narrative type games, this is definitely one that you should play, and that's kind of all I kind of think I should say probably about the game, but yeah, it's a good game. However, number one on the list is a game that we actually did a chat and review on early on in our YouTube channel, and this is 2016's Oxenfree. And this game kind of has a funny story to it because I bought this game and it just kind of sat there and I didn't really play it right away. And then we were talking and just like, oh, like this game like Oxenfree, and isn't that the game where like this and that happens, and
Yeah,
you were talking about it.
I'd actually gone on like vacation,
Yeah.
and I took my Switch with me, and I actually played some of this
Hmm.
when I was like on the plane and when I was at the hotel and that.
Yeah.
So when I came back, I mentioned, I was like, oh yeah, I started playing this.
Yeah, and it sounded really familiar to me. I'm like, wait, and then we started talking more about it. I'm like, is that the game with like the radio? And then you're like, yeah, it is. And so I was like, okay, I think I know what game it is. And then I looked up on my GOG account and I'm like, oh, I have this and I've played it for like 20 minutes, but I never actually beat it.
Yeah.
And then we both sat down and then played through it, and this game was fantastic.
Yeah,
It
it was
was,
amazing.
yeah.
Again, spoiler alert, also on my list because this was really, really good.
Yeah, I love the art style and the game engine of the speaking bubbles. The company also used it for After Party.
Yep.
And this is Night School Studio, and they kind of evolved on it a little bit there. But it was kind of interesting how you could basically say nothing, and then they would fade away. And then if you say like nothing throughout the game, the characters like comment on it, like, "Why aren't you saying anything, Alex?" And if you reply right away, then you like cut people off, and
Yep.
you have to kind of like time it correctly to get certain reactions and stuff like that. And it was just kind of really interesting that they decided to do that, because most of the time, whenever it's a dialogue selection, it's much like BioWare or Interplay or something like that, where you got an option of 1 to 6 or something like that, and you can just go like click, 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 click,
But
and then
it's
you
also
select what you
fully
want.
voice acted.
Yeah,
And that's like as an indie title,
hmm
like that is a lot of work. Like they had a full voice cast for this.
Yeah, and it was a very small team, and I was really, really impressed on what they were able to do with that team, because like, every aspect of it is done well, but like they did a really, really stellar job on the voice acting. The music is fantastic. Just took a really cool story concept and idea, and then just kind of, it's like ghosts and voices and stuff like that, and it kind of has like a little spooky element to it, and you walk around and discover different things and talk with your friends, and it's kind of like a coming of age story as well, and to
Kind
an
of dealing
extent,
with loss. And I mean,
yeah,
if you want to hear us go into it at length, head on back, watch our full chat and review on Oxenfree.
yeah. And so if you like that type of thing, it's definitely a game you should check out. But that's my number one game for narrative in the 2010s.
And we already partially got into my list too, because Gone Home and Oxenfree were on my list as well.
Yep.
I did have two others that I wouldn't mind mentioning though. Both of them very much walking sims. Stanley Parable being the first one.
Yeah.
What I loved about this is that you have a narrator who's basically telling you what to do the whole time.
Yeah.
And if you just follow his narration, you just go through it. There's no like, if you don't deviate from what he says, you'll finish the game in like 15, 20 minutes.
Right.
And yeah,
What is a game that like?
no big deal.
But it's a game on like it reacts on how you react to what he's telling you to do, right?
Yeah, so if you kind of change paths and you do something different, he changes what he says. And sometimes he'll be upset with you at how like insubordinate you are. Yeah, and this game has a ton of different endings, and it
Yeah.
gets real weird. It's got a pile of strange achievements. The best of all being go outside. It's probably one of the best achievements I've ever seen in a game, and it is don't play it for 5 years.
Yeah. Well, you have to have it installed apparently, because I own this game. I checked it out, and I've never installed it, and I've never played it because I think somebody gifted it to me. If that's you, I'm really sorry. But I know it wasn't Ian. But
It wasn't. This game came out a long
yeah,
time ago.
I'm pretty sure it was given to me like the year it came out. But anyway, I think it was John actually. Sorry.
Sorry,
But
John.
but yeah, it doesn't give you if you didn't install it. But yeah, it's a cool achievement.
Yeah, this is really cool. And then lastly on my list is Firewatch,
Mm-hmm.
which I was shocked you hadn't played.
Yeah, we talked about this. I'm going to be playing it in January. So I'm planning on an episode on my retrospective on it. So look forward to that.
Yeah, I'm
But,
excited to hear your thoughts on it, because to me, like, this was I mean, it ended up being a love story for me.
mhm.
But it's, yeah, like there's so much depth to this. You have a dude dealing with loss and like a past that he's obviously struggling with, and decisions that he's made before coming here.
Right.
And then you have this an operator on the other end of your radio who you develop a relationship with, or you could, depending on your dialogue options.
Yeah, because
And
from what I understand, it's all the interaction is through communication.
yeah, it's just, you're always out wandering, going somewhere, and you're having these conversations with this other person. And
Right.
man, like it was really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never got around to it. It's just too many games, I guess. But
Well, yeah. That's
it
it's
is
like
on the radar to play in the next 2 weeks.
it's like 4 hours. If you like any of the other things that are on this list, you will love this. So, Walking Sims, the big contribution to gaming in 2010.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so the next topic is puzzle games. So let's get into some of the puzzle games that we thought were the best over the last decade. I have three of them on my list,
Oh,
and the third one is Portal 2, which was released in 2011.
ah,
And
this game's so good.
yeah, and this was interesting because Portal 1 didn't really need a sequel, and they made a sequel for it, and it was really, really successful. And I think what was the funnest part about this game is there's really two games in one. You play it by yourself, and then you grab a friend, and you can play it multiplayer, and all the missions are two-player based,
Yeah, and
and
completely different. It's a
completely
completely
different.
different
Yeah,
story.
yeah, and I actually played the two-player version of this first with my friend on the 360, and yeah, and it was really, really enjoyable. We had a lot of laughs and a lot of fun and a lot of puzzling moments where we were just like,
Yeah, there's
how
so
do we
much.
do this?
There was so much about this game that was fantastic. From like the voice actors.
Yeah.
The first one was great on its own. It was like great puzzles, like creepy, like sub story,
Hmm.
and yeah. Then they made this,
Yeah.
and it was even better.
And it still stands up today. And if you want a game that is really cool mechanic for puzzles that is unlike anything else out there,
Yeah.
really, and also one that's two-player, then this is definitely one that you should check out. So number two on my list is Monument Valley, which is a game that was released in 2014. It also has a sequel. This is a iOS and Android game.
Wow.
This is a really neat puzzle game that is all to do with perspective. So all of the puzzles are based off of uh, essentially an optical illusion that you can twist left and right, and some objects can be shifted and moved if you grab them. And in order to basically get your character to get to the final objective zone, so you might have to move her over to a certain section, and then flip the map, and then move them to a different section, and then basically move a couple of like bricks around and stuff like that in order to get to the final like little doorway, and then that's how you complete the puzzle. It sounds easy, and some of them are. And once you get used to the types of puzzles, it's kind of easy, but it is really, really enjoyable. The I think the design in the puzzles is probably what fascinates me the most, because making these types of puzzles can't be easy, and it's really mind-bending and cool. It's kind of got like a unspoken story to it, which was kind of fun and entertaining to sort of watch through in between the puzzles and stuff like that. And the sequel itself is a pretty good sequel. They're pretty much more of the same with a little bit new mechanics and things like that. And that's the other cool thing about this game, is that as you progress, they'll add in like a new mechanic and teach you how to use it. And then you'll get more puzzles with those mechanics and stuff like that. So pretty much everything that you kind of expect in a puzzle game, and it's on your cell phone. So yeah, it's a really cool game.
Wow.
The number one game, though, on my list for puzzle games has to be Catherine, which was released in 2011.
This almost made my list as a platformer.
Yeah, uh, and it's interesting because it's kind of like two main genres in one. One of them is puzzle game, and the other is graphic novel. And so the game is basically a story about this one guy who's kind of torn between two love interests of Catherine with a K, who's his girlfriend, with Catherine with a C, who's his muse, I guess. And he basically ends up uh, by day hanging out with his friends and stuff like that. And he starts acting a little weird, and his girlfriend, Catherine with a K, is kind of like, "What's up?" and stuff like that. And then at night, then you interact with Catherine with a C. But whenever you go to sleep, then essentially what happens is you get turned into this dream world where you basically got to climb up this tower, and this is the puzzle game aspect of it. And essentially, what you're doing is you're sort of like racing against the clock to get up to the top, and you have different rules on how you can move the different cubes and stuff like that, and how you can climb. and you basically have to do it correctly in order to get to the door up at the top. And if you don't do it fast enough, you'll fall because the bricks on the bottom are falling because they're like these cubes that you're manipulating,
Or
kind of like
something's coming up beneath,
and trying to eat
trying to
you.
eat you.
And different various mechanics that will try and stop you, or sometimes you just kind of like pigeonhole yourself into a dead end so you can make mistakes and have to sort of start over again. And that's all intertwined within its story. And it was just the most sort of like entertaining puzzle game, graphic novel game that I've ever played. And it was really enjoyable because it was really out there. And whenever it first
Yeah.
came out, like I don't recall too many people talking about it immediately. And then all of a sudden, like, there's quite a few people talking about it, and then a lot of people talking about it. It kind of became this cult hit that a lot of people started to hear about and then play, to the point where it actually got a re-release this year with some extra content and like puzzles and stuff like that, and some extra scenes and whatnot. But the core game is still there, and it's a really enjoyable experience. The cool thing about the story is you can kind of play it in different ways, and it has multiple different endings. You can actually play in a narrative mode where you just kind of play the story, and you don't have to necessarily play the puzzle game if you just kind of want to see the different endings and stuff like that yourself without having to like look on YouTube or something to see and experience the playthroughs yourself, which is really cool and thoughtful of the company to do, because a lot of these types of games kind of force you to play the whole game, even though you only necessarily want to play just the puzzle aspect of it or just see the narration aspect. They really took that into consideration. So, yeah, my opinion, best puzzle game of the last decade is Catherine. So check it out if
That was a really good one.
yeah. So back to our regular scheduled programming. Sorry about the hiccup, and yeah, I'm gonna get back to editing.
So your game's on the list for puzzle games, Ian?
So I was kind of thinking, I'm like, I don't really play too many puzzle games, and then I was like, some of these kind of do fit into puzzly categories.
Yeah.
So Papers, Please was a
Mhm.
big standout for me.
Yeah, that was a really, really fun game.
Yeah, like, and there's so much depth to this. Loads of social commentary. I mean, and there's really nothing else like this.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a copy editor simulator.
Right.
Yeah. You're a border guard and stamping people's, checking people's IDs and letting people in, denying people.
Yeah, and it gets harder as you progress through the game by giving you like more strict credentials on the what you can allow through.
More elements to scan.
Mhm.
Yeah. If you've never played Papers, Please, check it out. It's available
Yeah.
on a couple different platforms. So
Definitely worth a check for sure.
Super Hot,
Mhm.
which just came out in 2016.
Yep.
I feel like this is probably better in VR. I haven't played it in VR.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen people play this, but I haven't actually really tried it in VR. So
Yeah, you're just constantly getting attacked, and the more you move, the more they move. So your actions are always going to have a reaction, which you're not necessarily going to be able to predict.
yeah.
So you're kind of trying to lead, like if you're shooting, you're leading your shots as to where they're going to be. Yeah, Super Hot was a lot of fun. The Baba Is You,
Yep.
which I talked about earlier. There's not a whole lot like this.
Yeah, this game looks really, really fun. It's kind of takes the simple gameplay mechanics and builds upon it to make like more complex like puzzles as time goes on.
Yeah, like this is very puzzly. I'm crazy for thinking otherwise. Pony Island.
Okay.
If you've never played Pony Island, just download it, play it. It's not expensive. I don't want to say too much. It does have puzzles. It's a fun experience.
Yeah, so the next genre is one of my favorite genres, right? So FPS. Most of my games, which fall underneath the FPS category, tend to be multi-genre games. And if they're on any of these lists, they're probably on the other list. So I don't really play many first-person shooters. And so I don't really have any of note really to put on the list. So I'm going to rely mainly on Ian. But the two of them that I will say are the remake of Doom from 2016, because like that's how you remake a game.
It's not even a remake, it's a continuation. It's a revitalization of the shooter genre back to its roots of just run, gun, chaos.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I found it fun. And the Doom VFR version that came out a year later in 2017, both are fantastic first-person shooters, and I really enjoyed them. Best part, the little bro fist with the action figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he adjusts his little arms like, boop. But anyway, yeah, I'm pretty sure I've slid that animation in a couple of episodes at this point. But anyway, yeah. So those are the first-person shooter games that I've liked over a lot over the last decade. But Ian, take us into first-person shooter land.
I didn't want to go too deep because I mean we had so many other things, but there was some things that I found that were super special.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Doom was on my list because again, this brought shooters back to what they were when I was like 8 years old
Mm-hmm.
playing Doom.
Yeah, it was definitely like back to form, like pre like the influence of Quake, essentially. Your next one, Ian?
Titanfall 2.
Yeah, I knew this was gonna be here.
Titanfall 2.
It's free this month too.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on PlayStation Network.
Get it. Play it.
Yeah.
Nobody played this game.
Yeah, it's
It's devastating. It is heartbreaking. This is the best first-person shooter of the last decade.
Mhm.
I don't care. Don't at me. But in my opinion, this was it. This has the
Yeah.
best story. The gameplay's amazing.
Mhm.
And yeah. Even the multiplayer. There's nothing bad to say about this. Other than nobody played it.
Some people play it, just not enough.
Yeah. Heartbreaking.
It is a little heartbreaking.
And I would regret it if I didn't make it through this list without mentioning a BioShock game. I can't mention the first one because it's too old. I can't talk about the second one because it's not good enough. So BioShock Infinite. Yeah.
Cool.
If you have never played BioShock Infinite, play it.
Awesome.
There's no excuse. You've got the BioShock collection, which you can get on almost every console.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Or on PC, which includes every version. The PC version has the original and remasters of 1 and 2,
yeah.
as well as Infinite. So I picked it up for $20 2 years ago.
Right.
You have no excuse. Go play BioShock.
Cool. So moving on, the next genre is strategy games. I have 2 on this list.
XCOM.
No. It was kind of a big miss for me, but anyway. So Civilization 5 in 2010 is my number 2 on the list. And yeah, I love the series Civilization. I feel that Civilization 5 is probably one of the stronger civilizations that's been released since its inception.
Yep.
And I just really love the 5th one. I don't like the 6th one enough to put that one over this one, which is why I chose 5. Maybe it'll change with more expansion packs as they're released for Civ 6. I'm not certain. Only time will tell. But yeah, Civ 5 is a tile-based turn strategy game, which you can play with a lot of friends, and I think that's one of the aspects I like the most about it, and why it's on this list. Me and 2 of my other friends have downed hundreds of hours into this game together.
Wow.
And in the same note of a game that we've downed a few hundred hours together is my number 1, Stellaris from 2016. I've mentioned this game in passing a few times in the show. It's a 4X space game, basically, and it's really takes homage to a lot of the older 4X space games, which are kind of the infamous ones, kind of like Master of Orion or Pax Imperia, Element Domain, and yeah, it's a really great game. To get its full breadth, you kind of have to play it with all of the expansion packs. But yeah, it's definitely worth it, especially if you like 4X games. And I think this is one of my favorite space 4X games of all time, actually. And yeah, it was released in 2016, and I've played many games by myself and with my friends, and it's enjoyable all round. And it's cross-platform too. I have a couple friends who are on Steam. I obviously have it on GOG, and we can play together. There's no problem. You just have to use the Paradox online multiplayer thing, which is a really good workaround for not having to choose platforms.
I think there's
But
actually console versions of that out now.
there's now a console version of it as well. Yeah. But I don't think they can play with each other because the version is slightly older. But anyway, yeah. So Stellaris is my favorite strategy game of the last decade. Your favorite strategy games over the last decade, Ian?
Again, this is going to be kind of a weird one, but Ghost Recon Shadow Wars?
Right, which is a first-person shooter
Nope.
strategy, a third-person shooter.
Nope.
Okay,
This is a turn-based.
shows you what I know.
Uh,
I don't play the Ghost Recon games, so
it's like a turn-based, I guess almost
like
RPG.
tiles.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is like you pick your squad. I mean, you get more options as you kind of go on throughout the game. You do have a very restricted character list from the get-go, but
Right.
yeah, there's RPG elements. You're unlocking new abilities for each of the characters
Yeah.
as you go. You're advancing them in directions that you want to,
Okay.
and yeah, this is a tactical strategy game,
Cool.
tile-based, cover mechanics.
Yeah.
It's like a really good XCOM. So
Awesome.
maybe you won't like it.
No, I do like XCOM's mechanics. I just didn't like some of its. Yeah.
But this was
I'll
a
go back to XCOM. Don't worry.
this was a launch title on the 3DS.
Oh, okay, cool.
So this came out of nowhere. I picked it up because there wasn't a lot on the 3DS when it originally came out,
Right.
and this blew my mind.
Nice.
I played hours of this.
Cool.
And then finally, it really will be of no surprise, but Wargroove.
Yeah.
I don't like my strategy games to be too complex because I'm not that complex of a guy. And yeah, Wargroove, it's a great time. If you
Mhm.
love Advance Wars and fantasy,
Mhm.
play it.
Yeah, this is the spiritual successor, so with a fantasy flair.
Yep.
Hmm. The next genre of games are horror games that we're going to go over. So I have 4 of them on my list.
Whew.
Number 4 is a game that I picked up whenever I picked up the PlayStation 4. Came out in 2014, and it's Alien Isolation. I knew that this was a survival horror game, and it looked really cool, and it had the aesthetic of the original Ridley Scott movie, which is my favorite Alien movie. And that kind of I kept my sights on the game because it's like, okay, I'm gonna get this game, and I'll wait for the PlayStation 5 for whenever I pick that up. And I loved this game. It was really, really cool. At first, I didn't really like how you couldn't jump because I was like, oh, it's a first-person shooter, you should be able to jump. But then I kind of realized the design choice of why you couldn't do it. And yeah, it's just really, really cool. And to be honest, I think it's the only game that uses the microphone in the PS4 controller that I actually enjoyed.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, just really, really fun, enjoyable. It kind of builds on itself. And you're in a lot of isolation for the game. And it's just a really cool, like, survivor horror game.
This is on my list too.
Cool.
Like my list is a lot shorter, but
Mhm.
this is one of mine.
Yeah.
And because I think this perfectly captured the Alien aesthetic.
Yeah.
We've seen so many Alien games based off of Aliens,
Yeah.
where
The
it's just
action-oriented
constant
Alien movie.
action.
Mhm.
Whereas, when I was a kid, Aliens was my favorite of the series
That's fair.
because it was like just in your face action.
Yeah.
But the older I got, the more I appreciated the slow burn of Alien.
Hmm.
And when I threw this in, immediately, you're just sucked right into that world. Everything about the aesthetic is
Yeah.
on point.
It's amazing how accurate it is to the future of the 79 Alien movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My number 3 on the list is Little Nightmares, which came out in 2017. This game was really, really fun. It's kind of like a 2.5D platformer game that's also a horror aesthetic to it. And yeah, it was really, really enjoyable because you had stealth mechanics in it and platforming mechanics, and just it was just it kind of almost has a Burton feeling to it, Tim Burton, and it's just really, really fun. If you like games that aren't too long, that have a horror aesthetic to it, and you haven't gotten around to this game, I highly recommend you look into this game. There's a few expansion packs as well for it, which add some gameplay elements to it, which were really great as well. And it's a really great game. Little Nightmares. Number two is, and I had a hard time between number two and number one on my list for this one, but I ultimately decided for number two is Evil Within 2, which came out in 2017. This is kind of a parallel to how Resident Evil used to be, and just a newer game, and it's a really fantastic series. If you like the older Resident Evil games like Resident Evil 2 or Code Veronica, Zero, basically not 5 or 6, you'll probably really enjoy this game. Its horror is a little bit different, and its gameplay loop is semi-similar. So it's very familiar but unique, and that's what I liked so much about this game, because it reminded me so much of the types of survival horror games that I loved and grew up as a kid. And the Resident Evil games that and some of like the oddball ones like the D series and stuff like that, yeah, this game just kind of resonated with me and was really, really enjoyable game. Can't wait to see the next one, and or hopefully they make more. So yeah, and the number one on my list kind of introduced me to VR on the PlayStation, and it's 2017's Resident Evil 7. Uh, I kind of had mixed feelings about this game because I was like, oh, I really don't like how they changed the formula for Resident Evil, and I was kind of in that camp. And then I finally played the game and I loved it. This was the best survival horror game, in my opinion, in the last decade, especially in VR. If you've played the game and you've not played in VR, you need to re-experience the game because it was fantastic in the PlayStation VR. And it was just really, really fun. It took a lot of the elements of the original Resident Evil game loop that I enjoy. Not all of them. It is missing some of the stuff that I really enjoy from what I consider Resident Evil, but it still felt like Resident Evil, but completely fresh and new. Unlike in a good way, unlike some of the attempts that they did in changing the series to an action game. This was still a horror game, and it was fantastic to bout. So Resident Evil 7 is my top horror game of the last decade. Ian, you have one more game that you want to mention?
I got one. PT.
I never got to experience this.
Which it's not easy to play at this point. But yeah, I mean, this could have gone into walking simulators, but
because it's just a demo.
Yeah, this was really just a demo.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking knowing that we're never gonna get that, like Kojima Silent Hills with Norman Reedus. I mean, we got the other walking simulator, but yeah, PT. If you've never played it, go watch a playthrough of it.
Yeah, it's probably the easiest and, like, we'll be honest, kind of best way to do it at this point, because you're gonna be paying a lot of money for a PlayStation that has it installed on it,
or go through some semi-questionable
methods.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways,
you do you.
Yeah. But PT, it's good. Real good.
Yeah, I've seen the gameplay footage of it, and it looks really, really cool. Yeah. So the next genre or style of game that's on our list are VR titles, and we each have two of them that we want to talk about. So, Ian, do you want to bring us through your two VR titles that you think stood out the most in the last decade?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of special because really this is the first decade where we've gotten VR titles.
Yeah, well, at least affordable and it means to like the masses in the home.
Yeah,
I remember playing it like in the mid '90s.
But everything was like blocky and like
yeah.
And on that point, Job Simulator. But to me, I remember going to a VR arcade back in like I guess like 2016 when VR arcades were kind of a new thing.
Yep.
And I we paid for an hour, and I played Job Simulator for the entire hour. I know my friend was like, oh, I played this, and then I tried this and this. He's like, what'd you do? And I was like, play Job Simulator. He's like,
Right.
I looked at it, but it looked dumb. And I was like, no, man, it was amazing.
Yeah,
Because
that's fun.
it holds everything that I love about VR, like being able to just interact with the entire world.
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny. It was funny. It was original. Yeah. And now you've got Vacation Simulator as well. Like they're
Yeah.
actually continuing the series. So
Yeah, I wonder what they're gonna come up with next.
to me, this was like the peak of your beginning,
Mm-hmm.
and it only got better from
It was
here.
the spark that kind of started it.
And where I see things going are my next one, which is Blood and Truth,
Yeah.
which was a fantastic story.
Mm-hmm.
Probably it's one of my favorite games of the year.
Yep.
When we inevitably do the games of the year list, because we will, this is going to be on mine. Don't be surprised.
Right.
This game was amazing, and I'm only more excited for where they're going to go with storytelling like
sequel,
this.
Yeah. Because you said it's open for a sequel too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they leave it open.
Yeah.
So,
We'll probably get it in the next year or two. So.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, how about you, JC? I know you got a couple.
Right. So I flip back and forth with these two, but ultimately, my number 2 was Moss, which came out in 2018. This game is like a VR platformer kind of with puzzles, and I just love this game. It reminded me of the Redwall books whenever I was growing up. I used to read some of those books and different fables and things like that. And you basically help guide this little mouse through different areas to try and progress through the story. And they kind of left it open for a sequel, and there's supposed to be a sequel, but there hasn't been any real talk about it. So I really hope that this happens, hopefully in 2020. Because it's been a couple of years, and it's hopefully given them some time to work on it. But yeah, I think anybody who has VR needs to experience this game, and it's kind of a game that it's great in so many ways. It looks fantastic. Its gameplay loop is really fun. The game is adorable, and it's not too long. And yeah, it's just a great game. But ultimately, number 1 is I decided to go with the game that I play probably the most in VR. If you watch the channel, you probably guess at what this is. It's came out this year, 2019, Beat Saber. I have a lot of fun playing this game. I'm constantly going back to this game and playing the songs. I have it on the PlayStation VR. I can't play the free songs, like the custom songs that the fan community makes, but they're continually adding in more songs, and it's still, I find it enjoyable. And yeah, it's a really fun game. Beat Saber is kind of that game that's kind of explained as this is sort of like the VR experience. If you've played VR, you kind of have played this game, or you should play this game. It's a great introduction to VR as well, just because it's so fun and simple. And yeah, being a fan of rhythm games and now a fan of VR, this takes both of those together. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. If you've never tried it out, give it a shot. You probably enjoy it too. So moving on in different categories that we've passed, like genres, is best remake. And
we really saw a lot of remakes and remasters over the last decade.
I mean, over the last decades.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But there were some really, really good standout ones. So
Mhm.
we wanted to give some love to ones that we thought really stood out for us.
Yeah.
I know it's number 1 on your list.
Do you?
Not just because I can see it.
Yeah. No, it's definitely, yeah. But you know what? I'm going to say I have 4 of them on this list. And so the 4th one is one that we talked about before the episode started, and I was like, I really want this game on this list, but I don't know if I should put it on this list. Maybe I'll keep it at 3. You know what? Screw it. It's our show. Number 4 is Pokemon Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby.
Omega Ruby.
The best Pokemon game. That's probably my favorite version of Pokemon games, actually. The remake was fantastic. It took it and just made it a lot better with the newer like polygons and engine that they created, and then took like the original like 3rd gen game and then just made it better. Yeah, so that's my number 4. Number 3 is probably one of like my contender for, or at least one of them for best game of 2019. And that's the Resident Evil 2 remake. We spoke about this game whenever it came out, and we brought it up a couple of times throughout the year as we've made episodes this year. It's a fantastic game. This is, I've constantly said it, the way that you make a remake. I know I've kind of said that with a few other games. It's just, I think the industry is finally learning how to make remakes and re-envisions or sequels. And we actually just got the Resident Evil 3 trailer, which is pretty cool.
It's true, we did.
But yeah, if you didn't know about that, check it out.
Nice.
But yeah, the Resident Evil 2 remake is a fantastic game. It's just as good as the original. It's not better. It's not worse. It's its own thing. And yeah, great. So number 2 on the list is a remake of probably some of my favorite games of all time. So they're the Infinity Engine games, which are made by Black Isle BioWare. And the Infinity Engine games are Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition, which came out in 2012, BG2, which came out in 2013, the Enhanced Edition, Icewind Dale Enhanced Edition, which came out in 2014, and Planescape Torment, which came out in 2018 for its Enhanced Edition. They all use the same game engine. The game engine was remade, obviously, for the original Baldur's Gate, and they've continually updated it with the feature sets from the other games and kind of kept them all up in the same version. And it was a really excellent remaster, essentially, of the original games, which some people say it hasn't aged great, and I think that is graphically it maybe hasn't because people are more used to 3D games or prefer them. But if you really love RPGs and you've never gotten around to them, this is the way that you probably should tackle that. And they're really, really great RPGs. In my books, the best RPGs released. And my number 1 best remake, probably like, yeah, this is like one of my favorites, is Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening, which came out like a couple months ago, 2019. This game is fantastic. It takes my favorite version of Link, Toon Link, that guy over there. I didn't have to move, you can see him anyway. And yeah, I loved the Game Boy game growing up. I had the game on the original, the brick Game Boy, and yeah, it's a really great game. This was, I think it was, they made the right choices for remaking this game because it kind of made it look like a clay model, and the graphics really parallel the style of game really well, and it's really enjoyable game. If you like the older style Legend of Zeldas, this is definitely a Legend of Zelda that you should check out because it's more like the Zeldas that I grew up playing rather than like the 64 style Zeldas, like Twilight Princess and some Skyward Sword and some of the newer ones. So yeah, those are my favorite remakes that have been made in the last decade. Ian, what are your favorite remakes?
I'm gonna start off my list with Parappa the Rappa.
Okay.
It pretty straightforward remaster. It just makes the game a little bit more accessible, in that you can download it again instead of having to go out and hunt for a copy of it, as well as find a system you can play it on. I mean, really, they didn't do anything too much other than just clean it up.
Yeah, it's kind of like an upscaling and clean up.
It gives you a way to play it in 2019. So,
especially with it looking good on newer technologies, it's always nice that they do this type of thing, in order to
just keep giving people ways to experience that.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings me to my next one. Which is Another World, the 20th Anniversary Edition, also known as Out of This World.
Right.
Which, if you've never played, is something worth checking out. You can download it on literally everything.
Right.
It was one of the first really more narrative-driven games, and really inspired a lot of the major players that we see in like directing
Right.
currently, guys like Hideo Kojima and Suda51, they were inspired by
This
this
game.
to do the stuff that they do now.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it doesn't hold up visually very well, but they did a lot of great things at the time to make it look as good as they could
Mm-hmm.
for something that is 20 years old.
Yeah. And to be fair, it's kind of like the original Prince of Persia, where the frame animations are actually really, really well done, especially for the time.
Yep.
And
Yeah, the animations were so smooth in
Yeah.
this.
And they still kind of are, because it's like high frame rates, and they took the effort to actually make it look good. So.
And really, I mean, anyways, I won't get too into it. Check it out. It's honestly, it's not very long,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a fantastic experience.
Yep.
And I think it holds up. And then I will close off my list with what should be no surprise, Monkey Island 2, LeChuck's Revenge. They actually redid both of them.
Yeah.
But the first one was in the late aughts. So this one hit the edge because this was 2010.
Yep.
And yeah, this is the ideal way to play it. And I would argue this is the way to remake or remaster a game, because you did have a dedicated button that you could switch back and forth between the original.
Yeah, I thought that feature was really, really cool.
And it would just like downscale it to what it originally looked like, or it would just like you would just see the new visuals just slide right up.
And it was really cool because you could still tell that you were playing the same game. So like because you're a really big fan of the original, you could still tell you were playing the game that you loved growing up, but it was made into a game that like newer people could enjoy as well, which is always a great thing.
Yeah, because graphically, that's what holds people back a lot of times, especially nowadays, because you're so used to everything being like so high res.
Yeah.
And
AAA games have spoiled us.
They really have. But let's move on to the next category.
Yep.
Which we're going to say is best DLC/expansion.
Yep.
Because there is a little bit of that in there. But this was really when we saw the rise.
So it's Horse Armor.
Yeah. No, it couldn't be, because Horse Armor was in the late 2000s. In the late 2000s.
Yeah.
But this is when we got all the amazing DLC that we basically come to expect at this point.
Mm-hmm.
We know it. We know that it's coming. If it's a huge AAA game, it's probably going to have DLC a couple months down the road.
Yeah.
You're going to spend another $20 on it.
And and these are more expansion packs. It's not like the Star Guardian line in League of Legends. Anyway, what's on your list, Ian?
I only have one, and it's the Undead Nightmare expansion for Red Dead Redemption.
Yeah, I didn't play this one, but it looks really fun.
It added another game on top of your game for, I think it was $20.
Yeah.
It completely worth it.
Mm-hmm. It's always nice whenever an expansion pack doesn't cost you like that much money, but it adds so much extra gameplay to your game that it just makes it feel more worth it whenever that happens.
Yeah, they took the great things that Rockstar does and just continued.
Yep.
Just gave you more of what you wanted in the same setting, but a brand new setting at the same time. So, yeah, this is still playable too. You can actually still play this on your Xbox One.
Cool.
And the frame rate is better.
Yeah, because it's one of the listed games that it actually is built and upscaled for the Xbox One.
So, still playable. It's worth checking out. JC, I feel like they're going to be BioWare titles. I'm guessing.
Yeah, because I haven't named any BioWare games yet. Well, I guess technically the Infinity Engine games are
Anthem?
sort of No, that's not even... no. Not on this list at all. So the first one on my list is Mass Effect 3's expansion pack, Citadel, which came out in 2013. If you don't remember which one this is, it's the one where you basically have the...
This is when you have a party, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, how do I explain this?
I see Jen play this all the time.
Yeah, it's everybody's favorite, I think, or at least it's mine. But
she's definitely showed me grunt in the shower once or twice. Drunk grunt in the shower.
Yeah, but basically you have like a last party with your crew members, and all of the build-up and tension that's happening in the game is kind of set aside for a moment so that you can kind of have last camaraderie with all of your friends and partners, and just have that last moment together. And it really says a lot about sort of the characters that they're saving the universe and everything like that, or the galaxy, I suppose. But it just, it's so great. I don't, if you've played through Mass Effect and you've never played this expansion pack for some odd reason, please go back and play it. It's fantastic. It takes everything that's built with every single character and just like, puts in those like moments in the game that are just like, yeah, like I really enjoyed that aspect of the game, and I really enjoyed that aspect of this character, and just kind of brings everybody into a cohesive unit to have, like I said, like one last party. And it's really, really great. It was a great send off. That's really what it is. It's a great send off. My best expansion pack. I almost couldn't put this game on the list, and I really wanted to put Dragon Age on this list. Is Dragon Age Origins Awakening, which came out really early in 2010.
You just made it.
Just made it. Woohoo! The best Dragon Age made on the list. Okay, so I love the Dragon Age series, from its novels to its art to the games. Pretty much everything. And yeah, the reason why I put this expansion pack on the list is because I enjoyed the original Dragon Age so much, and this series so much, that I couldn't not put it on the list. And although I will say the core game is a lot better than the expansion pack, but it was really cool how they added in a lot of extra gameplay for like $30 or something like that. And it wasn't a full game, but it was like half of one, maybe. It was really cool.
And it's half the price.
Yeah, and it just was a really enjoyable experience. And if you've never played the Dragon Age games, and you really like role-playing games, play 1 or 2. I wouldn't recommend playing 3, probably before its linearity, and you're going to be missing out on a lot of backstory, which its bugs and the issues that you had at launch with importing your game and it thinking that people are alive that aren't, and then getting things wrong, and just me raging is the reason why that game isn't on this list. But anyway, Dragon Age Origins Awakening is the Dragon Age that made it onto this list. So yeah, I really like this game. Let's move on, and our next section is Best Developer. I thought this would be really interesting to go over, and I was curious who you put on your list, because I wasn't actually certain that we would list the same companies. I thought you might have listed some other companies, but it turned out that we actually both named the same company, Naughty Dog.
Yep.
They're the makers of Crash Bandicoot originally, until they sold the license, and they made Uncharted, basically. And The Last of Us. And yeah, they're really great games. And it seems like every generation, this company kind of makes a series of games that lasts for that generation. Like in the 90s, it was Crash Bandicoot. And in the late 2000s and early 2010s, it was Uncharted. And now they're making The Last of Us, and they've made a lot of great games in between, like Jax, and yeah, it's just a really great company, and I think they deserve the recognition for really staying true to what they're good at. The single player narrative, in a time where like 2 years ago people were saying the single player narrative was dead, and thankfully Sony said, nah, like we're going to continue making great games. And have them be single player, and it's not all DLC and monetization and games as a service and online accessibility, which we're just going to turn off servers eventually so you can't play the game that you paid for. Naughty Dog stood true and continued to make great games, and has continued to show us what great games can be. And yeah, I love the company, and it's one of my favorite gaming companies.
They're a studio that's not afraid to take time
Mm-hmm.
and will deliver when they're ready.
Yeah, because like not to be super critical, but I feel like if EA was the publisher of Last of Us 2 would have been released this year.
It would have been.
And
It would have been released in time for Christmas.
it would be out right now, and it would not have been as great as what it will be.
Nope, because it actually they gave a release date and then immediately retracted it
They've
and pushed
they
it back.
retracted it twice.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's just these types of companies, more of them need to do the same thing, and that is one of the best game developers. My choice, though, for best game developer, which probably is of no surprise, is a game company that has surprised me ever since Remember Me, for the PlayStation 3, which is their first game. I thought that the aesthetic of this game was really, really cool, and then another game came out. Life is Strange. The company is Don't Nod, and they've continued to have success and have really made games that I relate with the best and probably enjoy the best. I love this company, and I can't wait to see what season 3 of Life is Strange is, based off of what has happened in, oh god, season 2. But yeah, so I'll talk about that in a different episode. But yeah, this is truly like my top 3 gaming companies of all time. Yeah, it's like, yeah, some of them have fallen from grace, unfortunately, but Don't Nod is one that continues to impress, and I really look forward to the games that they come out with in the future. And everything that they've released, in my opinion, has kind of like impacted their genres in ways that are silent and are like recognizable, though, that they kind of like sort of make silent trends that kind of like ripple into sort of like the genres that they work in, which is kind of something to say about their success and how good they are. But yeah, that's my best game developer of the last decade. Yours?
I mean, as much as I want to gush and scream the praises for Respawn, I think they're in a tough spot because they're owned by EA at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So I really got to give it to Chucklefish. I mean, they didn't release a whole lot,
Right.
but you got Stardew Valley, which they have continued to push support for,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where we just got multiplayer this year. Like,
Yeah,
this
that
game
was
came
really,
out
really cool.
3 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and they gave the community what they wanted, which was multiplayer support, which, I mean, I didn't want, but whatever. People want to play games together, let them do it.
Yeah.
And then Wargroove. I
Yeah.
mean, come on. I'm excited to see what they'll do in going forward.
Mm-hmm.
They've delivered some really great product up to now.
And they've stood behind their products too, which
Yep.
is something that's really admirable about this company, and companies that do that, is standing behind your existing products to give them a longer life cycle. Like you said, Stardew Valley came out like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And they just released a really big expansion that
Huge.
will give people even more longevity to play Stardew Valley, which is a fantastic game. Chucklefish. Great game developer. And
Keep it up.
obviously your other one was Naughty Dog.
Yeah, my other one was Naughty Dog.
Yeah.
Surprise. Like I said,
They're
just-
fantastic.
yeah, nonstop delivering
Mm-hmm.
and not afraid to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are our best game developers of the last decade. Moving on, best platform. We had a little bit of overlap here too. The best best platform that's on both of our lists is the PlayStation 4.
How could it not be?
Yeah,
This
and
was it. This was the defining console
Mhm,
of
and
this period.
what I find really interesting about this console too is, from the PSP, the X cross media bar kept on being refreshed for the PS3, and then it got refreshed to what it is now, to the PS4. And if you look at the interfaces that are being used for a lot of like the like some of the RetroPie boxes, the retro game consoles and stuff like that, and their interfaces, and the Switch and its interface, they look a lot like the PlayStation 4.
Yep.
There's no denying it. They're a little bit different to like copyright reasons and making them look kind of like Nintendo or something like that, but I mean, if you compare how the Nintendo line of your games goes back and forth, and your PlayStation 4 one works, and then you have the grid section at the end of it, they look identical.
Yep.
And you have the options on the top or the bottom. It defined kind of how to make a platform moving forward, and people are copying them. And yeah, it's a great platform, and the sales of the PlayStation, as you were alluding to, kind of just concretely backs that up.
And what blew my mind is that they, as a company that very obviously lost in the previous generation.
Early, but caught up in the race at the end. But yes.
I still don't think so. I think the Xbox 360 went well over their install base, as well as like just general content, not quality wise, but there was just way more. I mean, I could be wrong, but
The console sales numbers are almost identical. But it's like Xbox, PlayStation 3, and then it kept on going like this. Anyway.
But to me, the 360, I was like, yeah. And then
it had like years head start too, so that kind of helped.
When the Xbox One came out, I was like, of course, this is an obvious choice. I'm going to pick this up first, and then maybe I'll get the PS4 a ways down the road when, it gets some good exclusives. And that is what I did. I picked up my Xbox One first and only played it a little bit because I was like, all right, this is.
It was so weird because
the
Xbox One's like exclusives were on the PC. So if you had a PC, why the hell were you buying them on the PS?
And they still are.
Or the Xbox One. So, yeah.
At the time, up until this year, the Xbox One had one exclusive I can think of that I would have wanted to play.
That like wasn't on the PC.
That wasn't on the PC.
Yeah.
And that's Sunset Overdrive. And now that that's out on PC.
Yeah.
Plus, that's Sunset Overdrive is Naughty Dog.
Mm-hmm. The one non-PlayStation Naughty Dog game.
Yeah. Which hopefully we in 2020 or 2021 we might actually see a sequel for on the PlayStation.
Yep.
So
actually we are going to.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no comparison. PlayStation 4, it's just miles above the competition. What was your next one? Because we differed here.
Yeah, we differed here. So GOG Galaxy 2.0, which came out this year, it's still in the beta phase, and this is something that we spoke about in our digital platform episode, where we talked a little bit about digital media and things like that. But basically what this allows you to do is it takes the GOG isn't as feature rich as Steam. It hasn't been around as long. I don't think they would necessarily want all the same features. But one thing that they have done with 2.0 is allow you to interconnect and interface all the different platforms. For example, it knows what like 6 Steam games I have, and it knows all the PlayStation 4 games that I have, and the GOG games that I have, and I can categorize them accordingly, and it actually like interfaces with the different APIs and stuff like that and keeps track of it all. And I see that's kind of like what it is moving forward. So if I used Epic for some reason, or Ubisoft's Uplay, it can actually like read into those games and then show your list, and I can actually launch a Steam game from this one platform. And that's the one thing that people are complaining about in this day and age, where we have so many digital distributors where it's like, oh, I just want everything to be on my one platform. It's like, well, this brings everything together. Sure, it's another one, but at least it brings everything together. And as long as the API is open, they can make an interface for it. And then, if Nintendo opens up their interface, then they'll be able to show you the Switch games on it. But yeah, it's a really cool concept, and I see this is what people will start doing in the future to keep everything in one cohesive unit. Being able to install, play, and keep track of all your different platforms on the PC in one, and it's just it's a good move. Anyway, GOG God Galaxy 2.0. It's a fantastic idea. I'm so glad they did it. And so do you have any platforms that you really enjoy other than the PS4, Ian?
Stadia. Sorry.
Because you like lag?
Ouya.
Oh, I forgot about that. That's a good
No.
one.
No, I mean, I'm happy with Steam, but Steam's old as heck, and whatever. I know you like
DRM free.
good old games.
All right, so before we finish off with our worst overall game of the last decade and finish off with the best overall game of the decade, we wanted to list some games that are essentially not on our lists and are missed essentially because
We didn't play them.
yeah, we didn't really play them or didn't play them enough in order to give an informed opinion on them. And I alluded to a couple of these as they were being listed. And yeah, so let's go through this list. And our lists are essentially the same because, or at least some of them are. So
Yeah, a couple exceptions, but I mean, like God of War, I only put a couple hours into it.
yeah,
It's-
and I actually haven't played this game yet because I'm gonna wait until there's I'm gonna wait till the Game of the Year edition goes on sale basically, and then I'll get that one. I have a feeling I'm really gonna like this game. My friend played through the game and he constantly talked about it, and I watched him play quite a bit of the game as well, and it looked really enjoyable. But haven't gotten around to it yet. Another game that I know I really need to get around to is Celeste, which
Same.
was released in 2018. And yeah, I have this game. I just haven't actually sat down and played it. And this is the typical story of a lot of gamers I know. And unfortunately, this is one of those games that made it to the list. But even more tragic than that, being the RPG fan that I am, Witcher 3, I've played this game for 20 hours. Oh, I did manage to sit down a little bit, but I don't think I've played it enough to actually give an informed opinion about it, because I think this is a game that I wouldn't actually decide how much I like of this game
How
until
much
I
Gwent did you play?
not very much.
All right, there you go. That's your problem.
Yeah, but this is like these types of games I don't really like rating or really putting on a list like this until I've beaten it.
That's fair.
Which I just don't think it's fair to do that. Although I am certain that this is going to be on one of the greatest RPGs that I've ever played. I just don't know if it's top 5 or top 10 material. Anyway, Witcher 3. So, yeah, probably.
Yes.
So, this is a game which
I'm
came
sad
out in-
because for me, this checks so many boxes.
Yeah.
So many boxes. And I have played, I think, maybe 5 hours. But again, not enough. And I've never finished it, as you haven't either.
Yeah, and so my story for this one is the same as Horizon Zero Dawn, which came out in 2017. I was waiting for the Game of the Year edition for this, just like I am with God of War, and I bought it on sale, and so it's literally right there, and on a stack of like near the top of games that I need to play. So the game should be on the adventure section. I know it should be. In fact, one of my friends just finished playing through this game. He's like, "Oh my god, thank you for like telling me I should play this game." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know. I haven't played it yet though." Yeah. But yeah, it's on the list. I have a feeling I'm gonna play some of these games like early 2020, like in the lull of the games, as RE3 is gonna come out. But yeah, too many games, too little time. And the last game on my list is a game that I didn't play, and unfortunately, this is because it just didn't happen, and that's a game known as Star Wars 1313, which is a game that Amy Henning actually was writing, and some people follow developers, or some people follow just a company, like they'll just play all the PlayStation games or they'll play all the Square games. Like I like to follow directors and writers and voice actors in some cases too. And this is an example of that. I like to go around, I've played, I think 90% of the games that Amy Henning has been involved with. And I was really looking forward to this. As soon as I knew that she was writing it, I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy this game. I don't care who publishes it. I don't care what it's about. I'm gonna be getting this game. And it's Star Wars bonus. That's amazing. And it's Boba Fett. Okay, cool. And that's really all we know about it. We don't know much about it. It got canceled because single player games aren't selling. We just listed a whole bunch of games that are single player games. I still don't understand why this is canceled. It is a tragedy of the 2010s, this game being canceled. So it's on probably one of the best games that would have been released, Star Wars games anyway, that we'll never get to play.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, because I play pretty much everything that Kojima's done,
Yeah.
and I have yet to play Death Stranding. I feel like this would have been on my list, and who knows, give me a couple of weeks. We'll do our best of the year, and this might make my list there, but I just haven't played it yet.
Yeah.
Give me time. Give me some time.
Yeah. So that's why, especially the reason why we wanted to go over this list is because there's some glaring offensive misses in our lists that are probably going to be on that list once we get around to it in a bit of time, that we're aware of, and we just wanted to make it known that, yeah, that's the reason why we missed those, or those
haven't had a
ones
chance.
specific on the list. So with all that completed, let's get on to the final two, the worst and best games of the 2010s.
What broke your heart this decade, JC?
SimCity 2013. This game was a tragedy.
Okay.
Its initial concept and design was an interesting one. And I was kind of on board a little bit with some of the pre-development stories about it, and then it just was kind of... It was dead on launch, and sure, they fixed it. You know what? They fixed it too late. I don't really care. And I think that's the story with a lot of people. And I think companies need to realize this. It's that you shouldn't just release a game premature, or you're planning to fail, basically.
Yeah.
And I've read some horror stories about this game with the development, and if I understand correctly, even the lead developers were kind of upset about some of the development of this game because they wanted to go one way, but then the publisher wanted to enforce a lot of different things that weren't necessary, such as continual online play, which essentially screwed the game because you just couldn't access it day one until they basically fixed it. And finally now you don't have to be connected online, and it's not essentially DRM in a box for $80. Yeah, as soon as I find out something like that, I don't even want to touch your game. And I love the Sims series. I played a lot of them growing up. I thought it was an interesting concept. As soon as I found out the trash fire that it was, I avoided it and just watched while I was eating popcorn. And yeah, I'm just sad that it wasn't a great game, and that's my worst game of the last decade. Ian?
Assassin's Creed Unity.
All right.
That's not even a hot take. That's like a lukewarm take. That game was a dumpster fire, especially when you follow up Black Flag with this.
Yeah. It
And
seems
then-
like a lot of people, like with Black Flag, it's like the climax in the game. It keeps on. It took a huge nosedive, and then it kind of bounces back up and down with the series.
Well, what's
It's
really sad is you get this like other like almost essentially throwaway game in Rogue,
right.
which was released on previous gen consoles. So that was released on the 360 and the PS3.
Yeah.
And then you get Unity on current gen consoles, and it is this broken mess of a confined trash heap.
Yeah. This is kind of the same issue that SimCity had. This is publishers basically forcing a game to be released on a specific time, and this was a really bad trend with the last decade, and I hope it doesn't get worse. There's been a lot of controversy about this type of thing, and we don't normally talk about this type of thing, but it's just kind of interesting. If we were to make a large list of the worst overall games, a lot of them would be the stuff that was released too early.
Yep.
And these are just examples of that.
I mean, for me, like, yes, Unity was released too early. It was buggy. It was a mess. But I think overall, to go from something so big and open as Black Flag, and then even to release something like Rogue right alongside Unity, which was also big and open, and it just expanded on all of the great things of Black Flag, and then you release Unity, which is so confined.
Mm-hmm.
And like, yeah, okay, it's great that you can show 100 people in a marketplace. Awesome.
Yeah.
But I have like, you know, a handful of streets. I'm confined to one area.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come on.
Yeah. It was like they were tech demoing a whole bunch of things for the later games almost.
Just broke my heart.
Yeah.
Could have broke the disc. With the garbage comes the gold.
Yep.
JC, what was your best of the decade? We know.
So, yeah, it's probably obvious what my favorite game of the decade is, especially if you watch the channel. But before I reveal what the game is, regardless of you yelling at the screen of what it is, I will say this. It is actually, I put a question mark in and Ian knew what it was. Anyway.
Oh, yeah, immediately.
It is actually pretty close between two different games, and the second game I would like to mention is The Last of Us by Naughty Dog. It is definitely number 2. It is really, really close, but Life is Strange still takes it.
I thought you were gonna say the second one was one of the chapters specifically.
Oh, okay.
I thought you were gonna say like,
chapter 4.
Oh, it was chapter 4.
No, it's chapter 4.
But I mean, the number 1 was Life is Strange as a whole. So
yeah, no, it's chapter 4. The reveal in chapter 4 was just the greatest. I was like, what? Oh, I wish I had a recording of me playing like that for the first time. It would be, yeah. Chapter 4, definitely.
So today we learned that JC likes Life is Strange. No surprise to anybody. Today we're going to learn that Ian really likes Diablo 3 because that was mine. Bam, there you go.
That was
decade
easy.
Over. We did it.
Yeah.
Way less fanfare with mine.
Yeah.
I don't even have a second. Who knows? Chapter 3.
Yeah. I think the only...
No, chapter 3 was the worst. But yeah.
Yeah. So those are our best of the decade for 2010 to 2019.
Thanks for hanging out with us, watching it.
Especially if you've made it this far.
Yeah.
And if you've made it this far, help us out by liking the video. If you know anybody who you believe would also like the content, please help us out and share it with them. And subscribe if you've made it this far and you're not a subscriber. Yeah.
We don't know how yet, but the most important thing I want to know is what was your best and worst of the last decade?
Mm-hmm.
Did we say it?
Let us know in the comments down below.
Was it Assassin's Creed Unity? Was that your favorite?
Yeah. Hopefully.
We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Anyway, we'll see you in the next episode. Except some of its flaws. Fuck.
But that's good news because that's probably just over an hour. Okay, probably an hour and a half.
No, we're close to 2.